Alright, CNT120, we're looking at our Chapter 3 lab. First thing I did was download a copy of the lab directions, and I saved it as a PDF, so I have it here and I can just have that file open and scroll through it. Second thing I did was download a copy of the packet tracer file for the lab. I put it in a, excuse me, I created a Chapter 3 lab folder. Here's the directions, and I put the packet tracer file in. I launched it from here. And now that I have that up and running, this is what we should be seeing. What I'm going to do before I get any further is I'm going to do a file save as on this guy. And I'll just call it, for me, I'm just going to call it demo. You might want to call it like working or, completed or something like that. And now, if anything goes wrong, I can open up the original one, start it over, and I can keep my progress in this one. That way I'm just saving my progress as I go. Alrighty. So let's take a look what we're going to do in this lab. If we look at our Chapter 3 lab here, we're going to try to touch each of the addresses that we read about in Chapter 3. MAC addresses at layer 2, different IP addresses at layer 3, port numbers at layer 4, transport layer, and then domain names at layer 7 of the OSI model. So here we go. Let's dig in. First one we're going to look at is our MAC address at the data link layer or layer 2. So we're going to work with the Philadelphia PC and the Philadelphia laptop. So over here we have the Harrisburg side of the network. Here's the Philly side of the network. Here's our Philly PC and our Philly laptop. First thing we're going to do is look at the Philly PC. Open that, look at the desktop, open the command prompt, and take a look at some results for there. So I'm going to open up the Philadelphia PC that's here. I'm going to go to the desktop. I'm going to open the command prompt. And while I'm here, if I do an IP config, this just shows me the IP configuration of this PC, not the MAC address that we need to know or that we're looking at. So I'm going to use the IP config command /all. Again, watch your syntax on these commands. Typos or, omitting a space or adding an extra space, the commands have errors, so watch your syntax. If I do ipconfig all, it still shows me all the IP address information, IP address, subnet mask gateway, but it also shows me my MAC address, my layer 2 address that's burnt into my network card. And this is identifying this computer on this network. If I look back here, this computer on this network here, this switch is learning the MAC addresses of all the devices that are attached to it and the port number. And what it'll do is traffic comes into the switch, it'll try to find just the port of that MAC address and send it out only that port. Remember, the switch is keeping a MAC address table. This MAC address is on this port, this MAC address is on this port, and so forth. So this is the MAC address that is burnt into the network card of this computer, so it's going to identify this computer on the network. Well, I'm going to see if I can leave that handy. We're going to pull up the laptop here. Let's go to its desktop. Let's go to its command prompt. Let's do ipconfig /all, and let's look at its MAC address. Again, here's its IP subnet mask gateway, but we are looking at this MAC address here. So if I can pull both of these up, there we go. Here's the MAC address of the Philly PC. Actually, I should highlight the whole thing. There it is there. And then this is the MAC address of the laptop. As you see, those are unique. Those are unique hexadecimal numbers identifying these computers on the network. These are the addresses that the switch would learn and maintain in its table. Port 3 has this, port 4 has this. That way, as traffic comes into this switch, the switch will look for that MAC address, what port, and send that traffic out only that port. All right, that's what we should be seeing so far. So we looked at the Philly MAC address, we looked at the Philly laptop MAC address. Now, we want to look at the Ethernet header and see these MAC addresses in here as traffic moves to the network. So let me close both just so I can go back to my directions here. So we're going to locate the Philadelphia laptop, open the desktop, open the command prompt, and we are going to ping the IP address of PC1, Philadelphia PC1. So over here on Philadelphia PC1, if I hold my pointer over, I can see its MAC address is 192.168.30.10. That actually matches the directions for you. So I'm going to open the laptop and I'm going to ping this PC. Now, when I do, it's going to go through this hub. This hub is going to share or pass that traffic out to the sniffer that's over here, and the sniffer is going to capture that. That is our protocol analyzer in Packet Tracer. Okay, if we were on a lab station in the lab room, it'd be Wireshark. Okay, this is basically our Wireshark in this Packet Tracer network. So on my laptop, I'm going to open a command prompt, and I'm now going to ping the 192.168.30.10, which is the IP address of the Philly PC right here. Again, watch your syntax, hit your enter key, and I should see 4 successful replies. If I only see 3 and the first one times out, that's okay. As long as we get a couple replies in there, that's good enough for what we're doing right now. I'm going to slide this aside. We are then going to take a look at the packet sniffer, and we're going to look for these ICMP messages. Ping uses the ICMP protocol. So let's open the sniffer here. We're going to go to the GUI tab, and I should see some ICMP traffic here. I do. I'm going to open up one of those, and we want to look at the header fields over here. Here's the Ethernet header. Here's the IP header. And then here's the ICMP traffic. So ICMP traffic, here's the IP address header, and then here is the Ethernet or MAC address header, if you will. Ethernet header. So in here, we want to look at these source and destination addresses. So if we look at the source, 9EDA over to C52B. Well, if I go back to my MAC addresses on these two guys, here was our, there's our ipconfig all. C52B, that is one of them. That in this case was the destination. And the source over here would be this guy. So if we were to look at its ipconfig again, 9EDA. 9EDA, yeah, so there's the source and destination. Now, it is very possible if you look at one of the ones above or below, these two numbers will be flip-flop, because ping is a protocol where you send a data packet over and the recipient replies back. So if I'm looking at the send, the addresses will be one direction. If I look at the reply, the addresses will be flip-flopped, if you will. So don't let that panic you if yours are flipped here. And if I actually look at the next one in line, I might see they just flip-flop on you. Okay? But those two MAC addresses are there because these are the two computers that are communicating. Those two MAC addresses. That's what we want to see. All right, before we get too much further, let's gather let's gather this information in a text file to submit for our lab. So I'm going to open up a text file here. I'll put in here CNT120, Chap3Lab. I'll put, Mr. Brown. And then what I'm going to do, let me save this. I'm going to save this into my folder that I'm working on. Here is my CNT120 Chapter 3 Lab Online, and I will call this, I think the directions say something like CNT120 Chapter 3 Lab.txt kind of thing. Okay, and that'll be in my folder here so I can submit it later. There's my results. And the first thing we want to do is we want to put the results in for looking at layer 2. So we'll look at the layer 2 address, if you will, and we are looking at the header fields, the source header field and the destination address header field in the Ethernet header. So I'm going to do this right here. I'm going to copy this in. Oops. There we go. Get out of there. This must be from my previous clipboard. Let's get over here. Okay, come on. So we'll do a copy on this guy. There we go. And then we'll do the destination header field. And what we want to do is we want to fill those in. So looking at our packet capture now, we want to filter that. We want to fill this in with what we're seeing. So over here in my packet capture, in my sniffer, we want to look at the source address and destination address. So here on this one, here's my source address. And again, if you pick one above or below, they'll be flip-flop. That's A-okay. But we want to gather this stuff right here. So I'm going to try to. I think it'll allow me to copy just one header field. So that was my source address. And I'll paste that there. And then I'll go back to my sniffer. And I'm going to grab the destination address right here. Copy. And I'm going to make sure it says that. There's the destination. Here's the source. There's the destination. I see C5, 2B, 9E, DA. We're just kind of making sure those all make sense. And I'm going to save my text file. I'm going to save my results. And then I'm going to be adding to this as I go. So there is my layer 2 addressing. Let me minimize one or two things here and we'll get back to, there's my sniffer. I'm going to close that for now. And back here on my network, these are the two MAC addresses we looked at. If we were to go to this side of the network, we'll see similar kind of thing. Unique MAC addresses on each device in the network. And again, your switch is using that to get the traffic to just that port, to just that node. That's what it's working on. All right, I'm going to save my packet tracer file as I go here so I don't lose that progress. And again, I'm going to make sure I save my text file so I don't lose that progress. All right, we'll come back in the next podcast and move on to layer 3.